But it feels like I'm falling, like my airplane is stalling, falling into my calling. I want it to immerse me. Don't put me up. I'm just falling. I'm just falling.
Grace and peace. Happy GODfident Mondays. Esther chapter 4, verses 12 to 14 from the GNT version. And it reads, when Mordecai received Esther's message, he sent her this warning. Don't imagine that you are safer than any other Jew just because you are in the royal palace. If you keep quiet at a time like this, help will come from heaven to the Jews, and they will be saved. But you will die, and your father's family will come to an end. Yet, who knows? Maybe it was for a time like this that you were made queen. The power of fear. Fear has an amplifying reactive result that can leave us delayed, restricted, and stifled. Fear is something that the enemy uses to perpetuate not only the apprehension of us stepping into our destiny, not only the apprehension of us doing what is necessary to break the yoke, chains, and generational curses in our families. Not only is fear perpetuated in our minds and in our perspectives to keep us from the fear of stepping into the relationship, to keep us through fear from stepping into the relationship between us and God that He intends. 2 Timothy 1 communicates to us that the spirit of fear is not the spirit that is given to us by God, but rather the spirit that God gives us is the spirit of power, love, and a sound mind, right? That means that if we counter power, love, sound mind, the enemy then intends to use the spirit of fear to incorporate the opposite of a sound mind. That's loss of control. The opposite of love, that's hate, that's unforgiveness. The opposite of power, that is the perception of authority and influence and power that is given to you in the world sense, but in reality, you don't have power, because power truly and really comes from God. And as a matter of fact, maybe you've forgotten this, but not only were we created in the image of God, but we were created in His likeness. Being created in God's likeness means that we were created with the particular power and authority that comes from our mouths, that comes from our lips. That is the reason why the scripture says death and life are in the power of the tongue. Right? In this situation with Esther, when Mordecai came to her to let her know what she needed to do as the present queen, it was fear that caused her initial reaction. It was fear that caused her in Esther chapter 4 to amplify the facts of the situation. And the facts were what? The facts were that the only time you can go to the king is if he summoned you. And if you are found going to the king without his approval, you will be put to death. The facts were that even in more recent time, the king hasn't summoned her in the past month. So for her, the facts were amplified, and the facts were used to create the barrier of fear that led her to believing that there was no chance or opportunity for her to use her position and authority as queen and influence as queen to redirect the law that was just passed to completely wipe out the Jews. But it was after she was reminded by Mordecai. Right? Can I get you to believe and understand that we at many times need a Mordecai in our lives? We need someone that God allows us to divinely connect to remind us of what it's like to be God-minded, of what it's like to have the perspective of God, of what it's like to speak life and not death in our situations. Where instead of speaking doubt, you speak life. Where instead of speaking negativity, you speak life. Where instead of I'm being honest about what I feel, you speak life, because the enemy wants to use the honesty about your feelings to perpetually hold you in restrictive seasons. The enemy wants to use the perspective that is limited, because fear is restricting you. The enemy wants to take advantage of your delays caused by fear to keep you to miss out on the opportunities and blessings and destinies that God has for you. This year, we've been talking quality in 2023. And in that, God is calling for a rising up of the people, of the believers, of the children of God. Because in us rising up, we cannot submit and fold to the power of fear. But rather, we should submit to the authority of our God because he has equipped us with the power to speak life in the midst of death. So in the face of fear, right now, I decree and declare that fear is not the spirit we receive. Fear is not the spirit we succumb to. Fear is not the spirit that we say yes to, but rather the spirit of power, the spirit of love, and the spirit of sound mind. Grace and peace, family.